Hello everybody. Hi. My name is Myloe, and recently I decided to jump back into the world of Shovel Knight. There's nothing quite like swinging, slashing, and bouncing your way to victory in a world where secrets are plentiful and rewarding. Now, me saying this is nothing new. I only love Shovel Knight as much as the next guy. That is, I used to only love Shovel Knight as much as the next guy. Everything changed when I started becoming curious about which order these stories all happened. I knew that Shovel Knight and Plague Knight's campaigns were very close to each other, and that Specter Knight's must have happened well before either of them, but that's pretty much all I knew. I had no idea what to make of King Knight's campaign at all, or if it was even canon. I didn't know the scope of just how intertwined these stories all are with each other, and in short, I really didn't know anything about the Shovel Knight chronology until I personally started researching it. And as a first point of research, I thought I should look up a good old YouTube video explaining it all in a way I can follow. But that doesn't exist. That's right. As much as I looked around for a lengthy, story-driven video about Shovel Knight's story, I could not find what I wanted. I wanted to know how these four campaigns mixed with each other. I wanted to know the order, the intricacies, the Easter eggs. But no such video came to aid me. Without a video to follow, I took to the internet, and of course, this subject has been discussed on Reddit like a bazillion times. Everything I talk about in this video will be in reference to a lot of different posts I've been looking through, but now it can all finally be in one place, in one video. So, without any further distractions, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Shovel Knight chronology. The very earliest point we can kick off our story here would be Specter Knight's memories. These are all normally brought up one by one throughout Specter Knight's campaign and act as a sort of origin story for Specter Knight. At the time of the flashback, Specter Knight was known as Donovan, and he was quite more alive than he is now. He and his partner Luan were trained thieves and partners for life. Luan's son Reese is just a child, but he runs around with a weapon like he's an adventurer and is generally throwing himself into dangerous situations. Donovan tells Luan that he would sooner die than let anything happen to Reese, and Luan gives him a keepsake locket as a gift. Concerned for his son's well-being, he talks to Donovan about a potential solution to the issue. The two thieves decide to set out on a quest for a mystical amulet, said to hold the power over life and death. With it, Luan intends to keep protection over his son's life in the event that anything should happen to him. After a lot of running, climbing, slashing, dashing, and good help from one another, they make it to the top of the tower where the amulet rests. Donovan approaches the amulet that they've worked so hard to achieve, and as he does, Shield Knight enters the room, warning both men about the dangers of the amulet. She tells them there's no way anyone could control the power within, and that it should be destroyed, which is exactly what brought her here in the first place. Donovan refuses to give up his quest, persisting even through Luan's uncertainty. Donovan raises his sword to Shield Knight and they battle until they are both weary. The tower starts to shake and Donovan decides it's now or never. Luan tries to talk him out of it, but gets hit across the room by Donovan. Right as he goes to grab the amulet, the floor of the tower they were on crumbles, leaving Donovan and Luan tumbling to the ground from a fatal height. Keep in mind for later that Shield Knight didn't actually fall. As a little side note, Shovel Knight's intro cutscene shows that he witnessed an event where he was certain Shield Knight's life was taken by the amulet, and when her body is nowhere to be found, he gives into a life of solitude in the country. Now back to our story about Donovan. Spread out amidst the rubble of the crashing floor above, Donovan clings to what life he has left. But before he dies, he is met by the Enchantress. The Enchantress tells Donovan that he is not any mere warrior and that she is willing to give him new life for the right price. The condition is that he recruits 8 knights to work under the Enchantress as her brand new Order of No Quarter. If the condition is met, he gets his life back. The Enchantress casts her magic on the keepsake amulet Luan gave him earlier and gives it to Donovan, transforming him into Specter Knight until his quest is finished. Now Specter Knight roams the land in search of the greatest knights that could benefit the Order of No Quarter. Along his journey, he faces Black Knight and the Phantom Striker, both of which do not succumb to the Enchantress's order. After some failure though, he manages to convince both Plague Knight and Polar Knight to join the Order with little hassle. It is at this point in Specter Knight's quest where the Enchantress begins to conduct her grand scheme of taking over the world around her. She creates a game called Joustus, which really takes off across the land. It is a simple card game, yet quite in-depth, and it holds the interest of even the most noble of beings. There are 3 appointed Joustus judges, who are set to be the best players in the whole game. All 3 are kings: King Pridemore, King Troupple, and King Birder. With this whole game set up, the Enchantress gives a deck to Specter Knight as well. Not for him to play with though. He's meant to deliver this deck to King Knight, a king that claims nobility, even though he doesn't have any ties to noble blood. Now flash over to the beginning of King Knight's campaign. King Knight is searching for a way to become a true king who rules subjects and such when he comes across Specter Knight. With few words, they get into a bit of a scuffle before Specter Knight finally breaks it off. He tells King Knight that he can have his deck and simply tells him to play his role. Taking this to heart, King Knight sees a shot at greatness. He decides he'll set out on a quest to dethrone all of the Joustus judges, therefore gaining followers, therefore potentially finding his place as a king. King Knight takes his deck over to the closest Joustus house to start playing the game. After his fantastic performance, both a bard and a rooster man ask if they can follow him. Knowing the rooster has a flying ship, making for easy travel, King Knight agrees and utilizes the ship to traverse the land. With no intention of playing cards, King Knight uses force against King Pridemore and the Troupple King. Through his violence, he somehow strikes their good side and they join him on his journey to the top. Continuing his quest, King Knight travels across all of the Birder Kingdom and once again meets Specter Knight. Specter Knight has, at this point, already recruited Propeller Knight and Mole Knight. You can tell this judging by the curios that he uses in this fight versus King Knight. Anyway, Specter Knight tells King Knight that he's not been playing the way that he's meant to, and that if he continues doing this violently, things might not go according to his plan. After another brief scuffle, Specter Knight decides talking to him is useless and continues on his own quest. King Knight continues on to find Birder, and when he reaches the throne room, King Pridemore and the Troupple King's acolyte follow King Knight in. They talk briefly, but King Birder starts to attack King Knight. After the battle falls in King Knight's favor, it is revealed that King Birder was a fake all along, placed by the Enchantress herself. She shows up and reveals here that her plan all along was for someone to triumph all of the kings of Joustus and bring them into the same place while she builds her invincible Order of No Quarter. Reveling in her success, she goes back to the tower and all of the kings speak about what they should do. The Birder, who was controlled, is no longer under the Enchantress's order and offers to fly King Knight straight to the tower where the Enchantress is so that he can save the lands and deal with her immediately. The flying ship and all of King Knight's followers track the little Birder so that they can arrive at the tower together, and once King Knight fights his way through, everyone joins him in the room of the Enchantress for one final confrontation. Once threatened, the Enchantress fights King Knight. He proves that he's quite strong, so she decides to make use of all of the kings in the room. She takes their essence, casts a spell, and invokes the Grand Triumvirate. Triumvirate? It's a weird word. After long enough, King Knight proves that he is still mightier yet than this creature. After the smashing of the battle, King Knight remains on the ground in front of the Enchantress and all of his friends are hanging off the ledge of the tower, moments away from their rescue. But King Knight has been after the crown this whole time, and after his grand display, the Enchantress tells him that he can be king over all of the land and rule from Pridemore Castle. King Knight's friends are sure he'll make the right decision, but he takes her offer and throws them all off the tower. This is the end of the King of Cards campaign. King Knight takes the throne and rules over all of the surrounding land. At this point, Specter Knight finishes rounding up the usual suspects that appear in the Order of No Quarter, and it is around this time that the story from Shovel Knight Showdown would take place. I'm not very well versed in how that game plays out, so we're going to skip it for the sake of this video. Specter Knight walks into the room of the magic mirror, and finds Black Knight instead of Dark Reese. He lets slip that he's here to save Shield Knight before she can be harmed, and Specter Knight's ears perk up. Up to this point, he didn't realize it was Shield Knight that the amulet chose to possess to make the Enchantress. He's pissed because he blames Luan's death on her and tells Black Knight that he's going to stop her games as soon as he possibly can. They both sprint up the tower and end up having a bit of a scuffle. As you'd expect, Specter Knight comes out on top of this battle and heads into the peak of the tower to face the Enchantress. Not many words are said before blows begin to trade between the two. After a harsh battle, the Enchantress decides to imbue Dark Reese with more power and he becomes Nightmare Reese. With an order to kill, Nightmare Reese becomes the final boss and eventually gets struck down by Specter Knight. Once again, weak on the floor in front of the Enchantress, Specter Knight starts asking for Reese's freedom. The Enchantress tells him that she has only 7 knights in her order and that Dark Reese would make for a great addition to the team. Instead of this, Specter Knight chooses to become the 8th knight of the Order of No Quarter in exchange for Reese to be let free. Specter Knight becomes bound to the keepsake amulet that held his original freedom and takes his place in the Lich Yard. After a bit of time had passed, Shovel Knight sets out to rescue Shield Knight. Coincidentally, at the same time, Plague Knight takes off with ideas to make the ultimate potion of ultimate power, crafted with the essences of all noteworthy knights in the land. These two arrive at the first town almost at the same time, Plague Knight being 2 steps ahead here as he gets thrown out of the village right before Shovel Knight seems to show up. Their adventures continue until Plague Knight visits his lab. With a warning that there's an intruder about, Plague Knight eventually makes it back to his quarters. He leaves his room to find someone else is coming around the corner. It's Shovel Knight. The two duke it out and ultimately Shovel Knight comes out on top. I do like that from Plague Knight's perspective he made it seem like a cheap victory as opposed to a legitimate one. With no worry in mind, Plague Knight finds Shovel Knight's camp in the night and steals his essence quietly. Once again, Plague Knight is 2 steps ahead of Shovel Knight's whole adventure, sweeping night after night and claiming their delicious essence for the potion. All that's left is the essence of the Enchantress herself. Once Plague Knight reaches the tower, he is greeted by a table of all of the knights in the Order of No Quarter. few words are said before Shovel Knight falls into the room as well. It's hard to say exactly how this went down, being that Shovel Knight and Plague Knight both claim to have fought all of the knights on their own. What I do know for sure is that Shovel Knight and Plague Knight are the longest to last in this brawl, and eventually Shovel Knight gets his second lucky win. When all of the knights are hanging off the tower together, Plague Knight jumps away once again on his own mission. He talks to the Enchantress, who seems to know why he's here. They do a quick tango, and the Enchantress knows that if this carries on any longer, she'll have a bigger problem on her hands. She decides to give her essence to Plague Knight and prepares herself to fight Shovel Knight, as he would likely be walking into her room at any moment now. Plague Knight starts to distill his potion, as Shovel Knight begins to converse with the Enchantress. Mona finds Plague Knight in the tower and warns that it seems to be exceeding their predictions and that he should stop it, but Plague Knight couldn't stop it. Instead, he is faced with a trial in his mind. He fights the Plague of Shadows off and manages to pull through. Fun fact, this can be done in-game by standing completely still and showing Plague Knight has no fear and cannot be conquered mentally. Plague Knight snaps out of his daze and sees that all essences have joined together for one final fight. All the while, Shovel Knight has already split Shield Knight from the amulet's power. While they fight the Remnant of Fate together, Plague Knight finds victory over the corrupted essence, and finally his potion is distilled. There is now a wholesome moment between Plague Knight and Mona where Plague Knight reveals that he only wanted the potion to impress her. By now, the fight with the Enchantress is coming to a close as Shovel Knight is being carried out by Black Knight and Shield Knight is left to fend off the blast from the Remnant of Fate. Plague Knight and Mona have decided they can be happy together in alchemy without the need for a super potion and throw it into the tower as they escape, caving the tower to the ground. Somehow, Shield Knight did manage to escape the tower's collapse and the Remnant of Fate's blasts. Not sure how that happened, but it did. Shield Knight eventually finds Shovel Knight's camp in the night, and I imagine they continue to adventure in the future again. Since Plague Knight and Mona destroyed the castle and the threat has ceased, they were praised and alchemy became more accepted throughout the land. Plague Knight was even officially knighted by King Pridemore, who proudly sat atop his throne once more. Wow, that took a while. Honestly, when I started wondering how everything was woven together, I couldn't have hoped it would have been this cool. I'm so glad Shovel Knight has become what it is and that it resonates with so many people. Yacht Club Games has done a fantastic job with their game, and I'm excited to see what they do with new games in the future. Now let me ask you this. What did you think? I'm obviously not an official resource to be reporting on Shovel Knight and the story within, but I think this throws most, if not all of the pieces into the right places. I'm sure I made a few missteps along the way, especially with the Shovel Knight Showdown inclusion, and honestly, if you notice them, point it out. The more I learn about how intelligently designed these games are, the more I have to appreciate. If you made it this far, something tells me you probably liked the video at least a little bit, so maybe drop a like. If you want to see more things like this in the future, I'd be happy to make them. You could also subscribe to the channel so that you'll be able to see when all my videos are coming out. Anyways, I'll stop yelling at you now. My name's Myloe, and I'm out.